My name is Marissa Clark. I'm 32 years old, and I've been called worse things than thrift store girl by my own family. Standing in their marble-floored entryway, surrounded by the scent of expensive lilies and the faint clinking of champagne glasses, I felt the familiar sting of their judgment settle over me like a heavy coat. "It's a beautiful blouse," I said softly, running my fingers along the delicate fabric. What they didn't know was that this piece was actually vintage Chanel worth more than Emily's entire Easter outfit. But I'd learned long ago that explaining myself to them was pointless. My mother emerged from the kitchen, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Oh, Marissa, sweetheart," she sighed, scanning me from head to toe with that look I knew too well. Disappointment laced with pity. "We've talked about this," she said. "Image matters, especially when we have guests." "What guests?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would irritate me. "The Hendersons are coming for brunch," Emily announced, adjusting her designer dress with self-satisfaction. "You remember Rachel Henderson? She just got promoted to regional manager at the marketing firm, making 6 figures now." The comparison hung in the air like smoke. At 34, Emily was a real estate agent who never missed a chance to brag about her success. I knew she struggled with her mortgage payments most months, yet our parents, retired teachers on fixed incomes, still somehow saw her as the family success story, while I was the disappointment who couldn't even dress properly. "Maybe you could borrow something from Emily," my mother suggested hopefully. "You two are about the same size." I almost laughed. Emily was 3 inches taller and 2 sizes larger than me. Pointing that out would only make things worse. Instead, I smiled politely. "I'm comfortable in what I'm wearing, thanks." Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. "Comfortable? That's so typical of you, Marissa. Some of us actually care about making a good impression." What they didn't understand was that I had stopped caring about their impressions years ago. I cared about something they couldn't see, something they never even thought to look for. But standing in their pristine house, watching them prepare for another performance of family perfection, I couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different somehow. The pattern had been the same my whole life. Emily was the golden child with new clothes, the biggest bedroom, and the lion's share of attention. I was the quiet one, making do with hand-me-downs and library books, finding treasures where others overlooked. After college, Emily moved back home to start her real estate career with financial help from our parents. I took a different path, renting a small apartment across town and working as a financial analyst for Brookline Capital, a modest investment firm in Phoenix. The pay wasn't huge, but it was steady, and more importantly, it taught me lessons about money most people never learned. Emily always saw my thrift store shopping as proof I'd failed at adulthood. "It's embarrassing," she'd told me at my last birthday dinner. "You're 32, Marissa. Don't you think it's time to shop at real stores like an adult?" What she didn't know was that thrift shopping had started as necessity, but became a strategy. While she spent commissions on designer bags and expensive dinners, I invested every spare dollar. The vintage clothing, the second-hand furniture, the careful budgeting all part of a bigger plan they could never see. My parents worried about me constantly, though it came out as criticism. "We just want you to be happy," my mother would say on our monthly calls. "But you can't live like a college student forever? When will you start building a real life?" The irony was that while they measured success by appearances, I was quietly building real wealth. Every thrift store find meant more money invested, but explaining this to them felt impossible. Meanwhile, Emily drove a leased BMW she could barely afford, lived in a condo that stretched her budget, and leaned on credit cards and our parents for help. I drove a reliable Honda bought with cash, lived below my means, and watched my net worth grow steadily. The Easter brunch unfolded exactly as I expected. Rachel Henderson arrived with her husband and 2 perfectly dressed kids. Within minutes, Emily made herself the center of attention, telling stories of her latest property deals. Marissa works in finance, my mother told Rachel, her tone apologetic, as if it were something to excuse. Oh, how nice, Rachel said politely, her eyes flicking over my outfit with the same skepticism I'd come to expect from Emily's friends. What kind of finance? Investment analysis, I said simply, taking a sip of my mimosa. I'd learned that less detail meant less scrutiny and faster shifts back to Emily's success stories. She's being modest, my father added, though his tone made it clear he didn't really know what I did. She does something with numbers and computers, very technical. Emily laughed, sharp and familiar. Marissa's always been good with numbers. Remember how she used to balance her checkbook in college? Such a little accountant. The diminutive stung more than it should have. As Emily launched into yet another story, I felt myself retreating inward, the way I always did at these gatherings. After brunch, while the adults lingered over coffee, I excused myself. When I returned, I found Emily rifling through my purse with her usual sense of entitlement. "What are you doing?" I snapped. "Looking for gum. You always have gum." She pulled out something that made my stomach drop. A quarterly statement from my investment account I'd forgotten to remove after meeting my advisor. Her eyes scanned it, shifting from annoyance to confusion to shock. The number at the bottom was impossible to miss. 9,247,384. "What is this?" she whispered. I reached for it, but she stepped back. "Is this real?" "Yes," I said finally. 9 million. Her voice cracked. "You have $9 million? Those choices you mock Goodwill shopping, my old Honda, my small apartment, they made this possible. Every dollar I didn't spend went into investments." Her face twisted. "You've been lying to us, pretending to be poor while you're a millionaire." "I never pretended," I corrected. "I just lived differently than you." By now, voices in the dining room had quieted. Emily marched in, waving the statement like a weapon. "Marissa has been keeping a secret, a $9 million secret." The shock was palpable. My mother's hands shook as she read. My father's expression cycled from disbelief to something harder to place. "How long?" he asked. "Since right after college," I admitted. "Small investments that grew over time." Emily's voice was sharp. "You've been sitting on a fortune while the rest of us struggled." "You haven't been struggling," I shot back. "You've been overspending and expecting bailouts." The truth landed like a blow. Everyone knew, but no one had said it aloud. Victoria sorry. Emily pressed on, now more calculating than shocked. "You could pay off Mom and Dad's mortgage, help me out of debt, give our family the security we deserve." "You mean dependency?" I said quietly. "That's not fair," she snapped. "Family helps family." "I already help," I said. "I've been contributing to Mom and Dad's retirement fund for 3 years, $500 a month." My parents stared in confusion. They'd thought it was a pension adjustment. Emily's face darkened. "So you've been helping secretly, but refused to do more?" "What you mean by more is funding your lifestyle," I replied. Her desperation bled through. My parents joined in, not as aggressively, but with the same expectation. I stood. "For 32 years, you've treated me like a disappointment, mocked my clothes, dismissed my choices. And now that you know I'm worth 9 million, I'm supposed to solve everyone's problems?" They fell silent. "That's not how trust works. That's not how respect works. You mocked the habits that built this wealth. You don't get to benefit from them now." When I left that house, I knew nothing would be the same. Emily tried calling, then sending guilt-ridden messages, then even hiring a lawyer only to be told she had no legal claim to my money. 6 months later, I was in Denver, sunlight pouring into my new apartment. I'd moved for a fresh start and to be closer to the nonprofit I'd founded, teaching financial literacy to young women from working-class backgrounds. The very skills my family had mocked now became the tools I passed on. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Don't let others' opinions define your worth. Sometimes, the best revenge is living well enough to walk away from people who never deserved your loyalty in the first place. 2 weeks later, the news reached them. I wasn't there to see it, but I could imagine it vividly. My mother at the kitchen table, the local paper spread open, my father leaning over her shoulder, both of them reading the headline about the newly launched Financial Literacy Foundation for Young Women, and the significant endowment it had received from its anonymous founder. It didn't take them long to figure out who the anonymous founder was. The first call came from my mother. Her voice was trembling, caught somewhere between disbelief and accusation. "Marissa, was this you?" "Yes," I said simply. There was a long silence before she spoke again. "Why would you give all that money away? You could have helped you?" I finished for her. "Paid off debts? Bought everyone a second chance at the lifestyle they can't afford? I know. But I didn't build that wealth so it could disappear into old patterns. I built it to make a real difference." Her breath caught like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. An hour later, Emily called. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're unbelievable," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I do," I replied. "I've made sure my money can't be used as leverage. By anyone. Ever." "This is why you'll die alone," she snapped. I almost laughed. If the price of companionship is being bled dry to keep up someone else's illusions, then I'll take solitude any day. She hung up without another word. That night, I sat by my window, the Denver skyline glowing softly in the distance. I thought about the years I'd spent letting their opinions define my worth, about the countless times I'd bitten my tongue to avoid another round of judgment. And for the first time, there was nothing left to prove, no lingering urge to explain myself. They could think whatever they wanted. It no longer had the power to touch me. The chapter wasn't just closed. It was locked, sealed, and stored somewhere far behind me. What lay ahead was mine alone. It had been a month since the call stopped. At first, my phone had lit up with messages from my parents, from Emily, from numbers I didn't recognize but could guess were mutual friends trying to mediate. I didn't answer. Eventually, the silence settled in like a new kind of peace. One chilly October morning, I left the apartment early to meet with the first group of young women enrolled in the Foundation's mentorship program. I'd reviewed their applications dozens of times, but seeing them in person, the nervous smiles, the worn notebooks clutched in their hands, reminded me exactly why I had made my choice. They weren't here for handouts. They were here to learn. We spent the morning talking about budgeting, the psychology of spending, and how to invest in ways that didn't require a six-figure income. They asked sharp questions, not just about money, but about confidence, independence, and how to keep going when the people closest to you didn't believe in you. It was the last question that caught me off guard. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself? The room went quiet. I could have given them the safe, vague answer, but I didn't. I told them the truth. About being underestimated. About learning to stop performing for people who would never be satisfied. About protecting the life I'd built, even when it meant losing the approval I'd been chasing my whole life. When I finished, One of the younger girls whispered. That's what I needed to hear. That night, I walked home through the crisp autumn air, the city lights reflecting off damp pavement. And for the first time, I realized I hadn't thought about Emily or my parents all day. They weren't gone. Not entirely. I still saw their names when I scrolled past old photos, still remembered birthdays, still felt that faint ache when I passed a family having brunch together in the window of some cafe. But they no longer defined me. The story that had started in a marble-floored entryway with champagne glasses and judgment had ended here, in a small, warmly lit room full of people who saw my worth without needing proof. And that, I thought, was worth more than $9 million. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, 6 months after I'd last heard her voice. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports for the foundation when the receptionist buzzed me. There's a woman here asking for you, she said, her tone careful. She says it's your sister? My chest tightened. Emily? Yes. Should I tell her you're unavailable? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to refuse, but curiosity won. Send her in. A moment later, Emily stepped into my office. She looked different. The sharpness in her posture was gone, replaced by something slower, heavier. Her designer dress was immaculate, but I noticed faint wear on the seams, like it had been worn too many times. Hi, she said, almost too softly to hear. Emily? I didn't stand. She glanced around the space, her eyes catching on the wall of framed photos from our mentorship events. Smiling young women holding certificates, shaking hands with local business leaders. Her gaze lingered there longer than I expected. This is what you've been doing? She asked quietly. Yes. For a moment, she just stood there, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. Then she let out a long breath. I'm in trouble, Marissa. I waited. I lost the condo, she admitted, and the BMW. The market turned, I made bad calls, and now... Her voice trailed off. You came here for money. It wasn't a question. Her eyes flicked up to mine. I came here because you're the only one who could help me. And because... She swallowed. Because I think I finally understand what you were trying to tell me all those years. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this wasn't just another performance. But I'd spent my life learning that Emily's words were often shaped by what she needed in the moment. I can't give you money, I said firmly. Her shoulders sagged, but she didn't leave. Then teach me, she said, her voice low. Teach me how to do what you did. I don't want to live like this anymore. That stopped me cold. Because for the first time in our lives, Emily wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking me to change her. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Emily was still Emily, beautiful, polished, carrying herself like she was born to be admired. But the edges were softer now. Her confidence cracked just enough to let the truth show through. Teach you? I repeated. She nodded. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've said and done things that you probably can't forgive. But I'm out of options, Marissa. And for once, I'm not asking you to hand me a check. I'm asking you to give me a chance. Her words were the closest thing to humility I'd ever heard from her. But I also knew how dangerous this could be. Letting her in meant letting her close. Into my life, my work, my boundaries. And if she reverted to old patterns, it wouldn't just hurt me this time. It could hurt the women who had put their trust in my program. This isn't a quick fix, I said. It's not about just learning to invest money. It's about changing everything. Your habits, your values, the way you see success. I understand, she said quickly. No, I said sharply. You don't. Because that means no shortcuts, no excuses, no poor me speeches when it gets hard. You'll be treated like every other participant in the program. No special treatment because you're my sister. If anything, you'll be held to a higher standard. She hesitated, and in that tiny pause, I saw the old Emily flare up, the one who didn't like being told she wasn't exceptional. But then she nodded. Okay, I'll do it. I folded my arms. You'll start at the bottom. You'll attend every class, complete every assignment, and if you miss one deadline, you're out. And you'll do it quietly. No one needs to know you're my sister. Emily gave a small, humorless smile. I'm guessing you don't want me bragging to the others that I'm related to the founder? I don't want you using my name as a shortcut, I corrected. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Two women with the same blood, but worlds apart in how we'd chosen to live our lives. All right, I said finally. You can start Monday. But understand this, Emily. You're here to learn, not to lean. I can teach you how to build something, but I won't build it for you. She nodded again, and this time I thought I saw something real in her eyes. Not calculation, not entitlement, just hope. As she turned to leave, I realized I'd just opened a door I thought I'd locked forever. And whether it led to reconciliation or another heartbreak, I would find out soon enough. Monday morning, she showed up. Emily walked into the training room wearing jeans, a plain sweater, and not a hint of designer labels. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. It was the most un-Emily outfit I'd ever seen. The other women in the group didn't know who she was. To them, she was just Emily C. from the sign-up sheet. I'd made sure of that. If she was going to learn, it had to be without the weight of our family history trailing behind her. I stayed at the back of the room that day, letting my lead mentor run the orientation. We covered budgeting basics, goal setting, and the rule every participant heard on day one. You can't change your financial life without changing your habits first. Emily took notes, and I caught her glancing at me once or twice, as if checking whether I was watching. I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. The first 2 weeks went better than I expected. She showed up early, turned in her assignments, and even volunteered to help with a group project. But by week 3, the cracks started to show. One afternoon, my lead mentor pulled me aside. Emily was late again today, said she had a personal emergency, but it's the 3rd time this week. I found her in the lounge, scrolling on her phone. Everything okay? I asked. She looked up, startled. Yeah, I just overslept. That's not going to work here, I said flatly. You know the rules. She rolled her eyes, the first flash of the old Emily. Come on, Marissa, I'm trying, but you expect me to just flip my whole life overnight? No, I said. I expect you to show up when you say you will. That's the bare minimum. For a second, I thought she might quit right there. But she closed her eyes, took a breath, and said quietly, Okay, I'll do better. And she did, for a while. By the end of the first month, she was budgeting without help, cooking at home instead of eating out, and even started selling some of her old designer clothes to build her emergency fund. She didn't brag about it. She didn't post it online. She just worked. It wasn't perfection. There were slip-ups, like the day she came in late because she'd been window shopping and bought a handbag she couldn't justify. But instead of hiding it, she brought the receipt to class, used it as an example in a budgeting exercise, and admitted it had been a mistake. That was the first time I thought she might actually make it. Still, I knew better than to trust too soon. Change was a long game, and with Emily, the real test was never in the first month. It was in what happened when no one was watching, It came in the form of an invitation. One Thursday afternoon, Emily found a glossy envelope in her mailbox, the kind with embossed lettering that screamed exclusive. I didn't know about it at first. She didn't bring it to class or mention it in our check-ins. I only found out because one of the other participants saw her downtown that weekend, walking into the kind of high-end boutique that most of our women only ever pass on their way to the bus stop. When I asked her about it Monday morning, she didn't even try to deny it. It was a sample sale, she said quickly. 70% off. You wouldn't believe the deals. Emily? My voice stopped her mid-sentence. What was the first rule you learned here? Her eyes flickered. If it's not in the budget, it's not a deal. Right. And was it in your budget? She hesitated. No, but I could have made it work. I shook my head. This isn't about making it work. It's about deciding what matters. That handbag, those shoes, whatever you bought, do they get you closer to your goals or pull you back into the same cycle you were in before? She didn't answer. I thought that was the end of it, but later that week, she surprised me. At the start of class, she placed a designer shopping bag on the table, untouched, receipt still inside. I'm returning it, she said simply. I walked out of that store feeling like I'd just erased a month of work. I didn't want to admit it, but I get it now. There was a quiet murmur of encouragement from the other women, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd seen too many breakthrough moments fade when things got hard again. Still, as she carried that bag out the door to return it, I allowed myself the smallest flicker of hope. Because temptation wasn't going to come just once. It would keep showing up, in sales, in invites, in old friends who missed the old Emily. And whether she could face it down again and again would decide if this was real change or just another performance. It happened 3 months later. Emily had been doing well, better than I ever expected. Her emergency fund was nearly full. She'd paid off 2 credit cards, and she'd started helping newer participants in the program, explaining concepts I used to have to walk her through myself. Then the ultimate test arrived. Her old broker called. The market was heating up in one of the luxury condo developments she used to work with, and he had an exclusive opportunity. If she moved fast, she could put down a small deposit, flip the unit, and make an easy $40,000. I didn't hear about it from Emily. I heard it from one of the women in our class. She'd seen Emily having coffee with the broker, looking excited in a way I recognized all too well. When I asked her about it, she didn't dodge. It's a real shot, Marissa. I know I can make it work this time. I leaned forward. Or you could lose everything you've built in the last 3 months. This is the cycle we've been talking about. The gamble, the quick high, the crash. She looked away. It's just hard to say no when it feels like the old me could come back and win for once. The old you wasn't winning, I said softly. She was surviving on illusions. The new you is building something that lasts. Which one do you want to be? For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out the business card the broker had given her, and tore it clean in half. I want to be the new me, she said. It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no grand speeches. Just a decision. Quiet, solid, and hers. That was the day I stopped waiting for Emily to fail. Because in that moment, I knew she'd finally learned what I had built my entire life around. That real wealth isn't in the number on a bank statement. It's in the freedom to walk away from anything that could cost you your future.